one of these beings that I was with was like a really good friend. And we were kind of messing around. We would do the equivalent of waving a hand and set different injuries in my body, and then get a flash, like hologram or picture of how my whole life would then unfold with those injuries. And from that perspective, we thought this was really hilarious.
Would you like to start by sharing the story of your whatever led up to your near-death experience and then what happened during the experience?
Okay. So I had been working in Iraq for about 15 months, and I was out with 3 other colleagues visiting some of these construction sites. And it was kind of the end of the day, end of a long day of construction sites visits. And the way that we did this, when we went off base, we traveled in a armored convoy. So there were 4 up armored land cruisers. I was in one with a colleague, and we had a driver and a guard. And my other 2 colleagues were in a truck in front of us, and they also had a guard and a driver in their truck. And then there was a lead truck out in front and a gun truck in back of us. So there was 4-vehicle convoy that we were traveling in. And at the end of the day, we were heading back to base, and a roadside bomb went off under our vehicle. And I had been kind of half asleep with my head on my hand like this. It's actually pretty boring to be in an up armored, hot vehicle all day. So I was pretty tired. And I was in the truck half asleep, and then I was not. I was standing on kind of a little stage, and all around me were thousands of beings. And I was downloading information to them. And I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew exactly where I was, and I knew exactly what had happened. I wasn't confused about where I was or what's going on here or anything. I seemed to know exactly what I was doing. And when I was done downloading this information to these beings, then I told them that I wasn't going to go back, that I wasn't interested in going back to the physical. And they were like, well, what if you went back and did this? And I thought, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Maybe I will go back. So we kind of discussed a little bit about what that was. And a lot of it I don't remember. And I don't talk about that in the book for a reason, but we can go into that later if you want to. But when I was done kind of discussing that with them, then what I call blinked, because I was there and then I was in another place. It was as quick as blinking. So I call it blinking. So I blinked to this other place that I call the deep rest environment, where it was kind of this immense, velvety, black space that was very, very calming and very, very relaxing. And I had 2 other beings with me at first. They were I wasn't interacting with them. I was not really in a form at this stage. I was more of an organization of energy. And these beings were kind of tinkering with that, like they were tuning up a car or something. So I also then, while they were doing that, I was kind of having a life review, but not the way I've read of some other life reviews. I was just kind of paging through my life and reliving parts of it, and really looking for places where things happened in an unexpected way, or places that were really fun in some way that expanded my understanding of who and what I was, or what was possible. something. Anyway, when I was done with that, then I went into this deep rest state. I really kind of, I think I described it as just folding into myself. And I don't even know how long I was in there, but when I was done, then I came out and blinked again. And I was in a place now with two other beings, and I was kind of looking down on the truck. And I could see the truck, I could see the desert around our damaged truck, and I could see all the bodies in the truck too. And I could see them as organizations of energy. And one of these beings that I was with was like a really good friend. And we were kind of messing around. We would do the equivalent of waving a hand and set different injuries in my body, and then get a flash, like hologram or picture of how my whole life would then unfold with those injuries. And from that perspective, we thought this was really hilarious. So we would give me a brain injury, and we would see this life of me trying to navigate the world with this brain injury, and we'd fall down laughing. We thought that was so hilarious. Or we would sever my right hand and then get this picture of me trying to do everything with my left hand. And after goofing around for a while, we said, okay, gotta get done with this. So I just set the injuries that I chose, that I wanted, in order to set me up for the things that I wanted to do. And then I blinked again, and I was standing down next to the vehicle on the desert, but it was kind of like Twilight Zone, like everything was suspended. It was like I was between time space, and I was with 8 or 9 other beings, and we were all talking about what I had agreed to do. But this discussion was more like from the viewpoint of someone actually on a construction site pounding the nails. So when I was talking about this with that big gathering about what I was going to do, it was more like talking to the architect or somebody who was designing a whole project. And now, it's very different when you get down on the ground and you have to do it. So we were talking about things from there. And then when we were done, I just popped back into my body, and the truck was still rolling down the road, and my eyes were still closed. And I was still sitting like this. And when the truck came to a stop, then I thought, well, I better get on with it.
Wow. Your experience is just amazing to me on so many levels, because it's like you were given a perspective that not a lot of people are. Like seeing the perspective of the architect and then the perspective of being on the ground, both of those different perspectives is just fascinating to me.
I was going to say I hadn't thought of that as unique, but I think you're right. And I think that that's probably available to all of us on some level, or we maybe sometimes have experiences like that and don't necessarily think of it in that way. But, we project ourselves out into our future and say, well, I want my future to kind of look like this. And in a way, we're doing the same thing. And then when you walk into that future, it may end up looking very different from what you expected, right?
Right. So do you think we have the ability to change our future from this level here within this life, or can it only be changed beforehand when we're planning it?
No, I think that it can be changed from either perspective. The way I think about it is that maybe we're co-creating with that whole self, with that higher self. And maybe we can influence some things and create some things from purely from this personality, this conscious mind personality. But what if that's like creating from the perspective of a 3-year-old? Like, I want all the cookies, and the higher self just standing back going, all right, you want all the cookies? Go ahead. It's going to make you sick, that whole be careful what you ask for.
Uh-huh.
Whereas I think that if we cultivate an awareness that we are more than just this personality and this sort of narrow consciousness that we've been trained into, that we're more than that, and we may be able to access more information from an expanded consciousness, then maybe we can work with the higher self and have better luck at creating things for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great way of explaining it. Because I know if I was to plan my life from this perspective and get everything that I think I want, it probably wouldn't be in my ultimate best interest.
And it may not even, we think we know what it would be like to have all those things, but maybe we get all those things and go, oh, this is not what I wanted. This isn't what I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that there were some things you didn't put into the book when I think it was before you went to the place of deep rest. Did you want to talk about that anymore?
Well, there are things that I didn't put in the book having to do with what I agreed to do. Partly because I don't remember all of it. But also partly because we are trained to think in competitive ways and to compare ourselves to other people. And to me, whatever I came back to do it's my job and it's my business. And whatever you're here doing, that's your job and your business. And I think that a lot of people, if I told them some of the things that I came back to do, might either say, oh, well, that's not very important, or wow, that's way more important than me, because we're kind of trained to think that way. And I don't want that happening, because every single person here is doing something valuable. And it's not like somebody is doing something more important than somebody else because it looks bigger to us from our perspective. It doesn't work that way. So I wanted to take that potential just out of the book. I wanted the message that we all matter and that we're all connected to something bigger, and that whatever we're doing here is important no matter what you're doing here. So I think that's kind of the conscious reason why I left it out of the book.
So you mentioned that you chose your specific injuries that you would come back with because it would help you to accomplish what you came here to do. So do you think that all of us choose our hardships?
I think that all of us choose or agree to everything we experience. And that, I think that can be really hard to wrap our heads around, because from this perspective, why would we choose something that hurts or something that's really difficult? And I talk about that kind of in detail in the book. And I feel like I'm hesitant to talk about it because I wrote carefully. I tried to write carefully about it because I know I've had chronic pain and I've been in depression. I know, I never wanted to hear somebody say, well, it's your fault. Right. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. What I'm saying is that from a whole self perspective, we can understand difficulties in a very different way. What if you did agree to or design whatever difficulty you're going through because it's very, very valuable to you in some way? That we put everything in a context of one lifetime: born, grown, maturity, aging, death, and everything has to make sense within that framework for us. But the whole self has a much, much larger framework. So if the only thing we could remember was driving to the store and driving home, we'd be like, what is the point of this? Why am I driving to the store and driving home? It wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And we would never make sense of it until we saw the bigger picture. And maybe that's one way to start to understand that whatever we're going through in this lifetime may fit into a much, much bigger picture that makes sense.
I really appreciate your carefulness surrounding this issue. I know for myself, when I heard your story and how you and your friend, or the person that you had known, were experimenting with different, I forget the word that you used, different injuries. Mm-hmm. To me, that was just liberating, because I thought, well, I've gone through all of these hardships in my life, but maybe I'm taking them too seriously. But I know maybe not all people would take it that way. And it is easy to minimize people's pain when we're talking about this. And I've been guilty of that myself in the past.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And I really, I don't want to do it because, I've been there. When you're in really bad chronic pain, that's not going to help you.
Right.
It's not going to help you feel better, really. I don't think so. Yeah, it's to understand this. I think that maybe it really helps to be able to step back and enter an expanded consciousness. And yet, I understand that may be almost impossible for somebody who's in deep pain. It's very hard to step aside from that and see it from another perspective.
Yeah. In another interview that I was just listening to, I heard you mention that you're still able to sink back into that deep rest environment. What does that feel like?
It's kind of like shutting everything off, I think. Most of us, I think, have kind of a busy mind, maybe a little chattery.
Yeah.
Thinking of something, and that little voice in the back going, do you look good doing that? Or why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? And, to be able to shut all that off and sink very, very deeply into stillness is really deeply, deeply relaxing and rejuvenating. And also very, I think it's you really become one with everything that exists. It's a place of where you lose boundaries and kind of just become movement, or become creativity, or become breath. I think that, there's different words for that. I think a lot of people can reach that through meditation or deep contemplation. I think it's the place that the yogis go and the saints know. And I think that it doesn't have to be an exclusive place. I bet a lot of children know this place, but then, are enculturated out of it or forget it or whatever.
Do you have any advice for people who maybe have never experienced that, but would like to?
Well, I think, in my experience, maybe meditation is the most conscious way to do that, the best way to do that. But I think probably people have people who have done dream work probably know ways to get there, lucid dreaming. There are sound technologies that help people reach expanded states and then hold themselves there. And I think that those kinds of practices can help people reach those kinds of states. There's a lot of teaching out there, that I think aims at that stillness, at that really becoming one with the all. It's kind of the ultimate, right? And I think it's important. I think it's a profound experience. But I also think that bringing it back somehow into this world, walking around with that kind of stillness and with that kind of awareness that we are all connected and that we're all one, that we're all breathing here together. I think that awareness is more important probably than even the actual experience itself. How do you bring something back? How do you bring it back for everyone into this world and walk around in this world?
Something about your experience that's always fascinated me is the first part of it when you were on the stage, and I believe you said that you were downloading information to that crowd of beings. Do you know or remember what type of information that was?
Vaguely. I mean, we don't really have concepts for this. So I know what it is, but I don't know how to describe it really. I think in the book I said it was broadly cultural. So if you think of cultural as everything from how we interact with each other or how we interact with objects and how we perceive them, what we consider to be sentient and what we don't, or what we consider to be conscious and what we don't, all the way up to perceiving whole cultures as flows of energy, as organizations of energy, and then perceiving humanity as perhaps an organization of energy, and all the relationships between individuals and objects, between objects and objects, between any kind of like molecules and molecules, all the way up to how does an organization such as humanity interact with the organization that appears to us as stars or whatever, I mean, layers and layers of relationship and expression. So if you think of everything, it is an expression of the one, the all, spirit, God, divine, whatever you want to call it. We all participate in that. We are all expressions of that. Then it's like I was communicating what I had learned or what I had experienced by participating inside these kinds of flows of energy or expression.
That's fascinating. So is this more of a subconscious thing that you were gathering this information, or was it conscious?
No, not conscious. I think that we're all doing things as whole selves that we may not be aware of as conscious selves. But that coming into a body and participating in these systems gives that higher self a different perspective and a different way of influence and expression. So I don't think that we necessarily are, I think that we're rarely aware of the larger picture of what that whole self is doing or exploring. But I think that there are always clues to that. I'm interested in art. I'm not interested in the very, to me, tedious minutia of science of dot, 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 and that I think that there are probably correlations there that I'm interested in creativity, and I'm interested in healing arts and things like that. Mm-hmm. And other people who are interested in science have a different kind of interest on that higher plane as well. They interact with things in a different way, and they're interested in different parts or expressions of the whole.
So what would you say is the purpose of this life?
That I think that can be answered from different levels or different perspectives. I think that from one perspective, the purpose is to enjoy ourselves, even though that we may not always do that.
Yeah.
I think that it's certainly a great place to learn and expand as whole selves and as personalities. I think that thinking about something or daydreaming about something is one way of experiencing it. But when we actually do it and walk through a situation or experience or an event, then we know it in a whole different way. And I think that this reality gives us that opportunity in kind of a unique way. I think from my experience, I think there's a lot of realities that we can participate in. But I think that they're all unique. And I think this one offers some very unique ways of expressing ourselves and exploring who and what we are, individuated, and who and what we are as a collective.
Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think that we keep coming back here to this reality over and over?
I will say that I do believe that. I don't think that everyone does. I don't think this is the only world that we participate in. I don't necessarily think that this personality, Natalie, is the one who keeps coming back. But as a higher self, I think that I have many expressions that maybe I'll use these 4 strings for Natalie, and then in another lifetime, I'll use these other 8 strings of myself, so that I might, as a whole self, I'll recognize myself. I'll actually feel more like myself when I sort of regain myself, maybe. I think I'm perfectly open to the possibility that we don't have a truly accurate concept of what we call reincarnation. I think that there are concepts that are sort of beyond our cultural understanding or beyond our experiences, and we don't really have ways of translating those into language or into an organization of perception that we have. In some ways, on another level, of course, we're all reincarnated because we're all one. So we could say, you and I are the same one, and every being that we encounter is the same one. And maybe it's easier for us to parse it down and bring ourselves down to this cultural level and say, yeah, we're reincarnated, because it's just easier for us to understand. I don't know. I certainly use that model.
I really love the way that you explained that. And I tend to agree with you that we don't really understand what reincarnation is. Like, we may have a very basic or even inaccurate understanding of what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And I've sort of come to this conclusion because near-death experiencers can't really, like some of them will say, yes, reincarnation, everybody's reincarnated, and others will say no. And so I'm thinking there must be a higher truth here that encompasses all of this somehow.
Yeah, that's certainly reasonable and possible. I think that I think too that in the same way that maybe 80 years ago, if you had gone into the deep jungles of Brazil or something and told some tribal member that we could fly, they'd be like, you're out of your mind.
Uh-huh.
You're lying. That's not the way it is.
Uh-huh.
And yet we had airplanes and we could fly, right? And I think that what we believe and how we organize our perception influences what kinds of experiences or how we translate experiences when we have expanded awareness experiences, whether those are out of body or near-death experiences, also out of body. Mm-hmm. But I think that there are, when we bring that kind of information back into our personality has to make sense of that somehow. And that if we have a very narrow idea of what's good and evil, or what is possible and not possible, what is what is possible to meet and not possible to meet, then that may influence the way we talk about our experiences. If I had my experience and I was a very strict Christian, I might come back and not talk about a gathering of beings. I might talk about angels, or I might have perceived. I don't know. I might have put names to some of those angels, or I might have concentrated very heavily on this incredible feeling of belonging, of being home, and of feeling as if I were part of a infinite presence that I would have named God. So I think that, and I think it's perfectly legitimate. I'm sure I did the same thing in some ways. We all come back and want to tell a story that shares whatever we feel like we might have figured out, or something that might help somebody else. And we're going to use the language that we have. We're going to use the language that we know to try to make sense of that.
That's such a good point. And I didn't think to ask you this, but did you have any religious or spiritual beliefs before your experience?
Well, I wouldn't say religious beliefs. I was raised in a very, very liberal Presbyterian church. It was very inclusive of people and ideas, but I really kind of set Christianity aside when I was in my 20s and explored a lot of other religions and philosophies. And I guess I would say that I'm more drawn to philosophies like Buddhist philosophy than I am any religion. I think that a lot of religions tend to bend toward dogma and often end up trying harder to maintain themselves than to maintain truth. and I think that they can be very valuable for a lot of people. They just weren't valuable for me.
I really love the way that you describe that whole thing there, being drawn to philosophies instead of the religion itself. I can relate to that as well. So did your experience give you any new insight or change your beliefs, if you want to call them that, at all?
Well, I think that I believed in things like expanded consciousness, reincarnation. I had had experiences of like precognitive dreams and communicating with spirits and doing a few readings for people before I had this experience. So it wasn't all new. But I also, I think some of the more striking things that maybe changed some of the ways that I think were certainly setting my own injuries and knowing that. So that, I mean, I think that I had a lot of depression off and on when I was young, and I didn't really want to be here. And I just wanted to go home. And I didn't really understand the point of pain, or, why are some people have it pretty easy and some people have it really, really, really hard. And I think that understanding that we have some agency in our experiences really changed how I think about the world and myself and how my life unfolds. And so I think that was very helpful for me. Today, that's the thing that stands out. Maybe I would answer that differently tomorrow.
So what advice would you give people to get the most out of this life experience as they can while we're in it?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a good question. I guess I would say know yourself as more than the physical body, more than this personality, more than these emotions. Know yourself as an infinite being having this experience through this body and through this personality and through these experiences. I think that when we know ourselves from the inside out, not taking on an identity from what other people tell us we are or should be, when we really go inside and connect with who and what we really are, then I think we can begin to carry that light into the world and not feel so influenced by the world, but understand that we are agents, whether we are conscious agents or walking agents of our whole self. we have agency, and I think that can change a lot of things when we realize that we're all expressions of the divine.
Natalie, would you like to share with people where they can find out more information and what services you offer? I know you've written a book, you do art, and you also offer readings on your website.
Yeah, my art is up on nsudman.com, and I do offer readings. All the information about readings can be found on the readings page at traceofelements.com. And I've actually got a really, really long waiting list right now. And I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook author page. I try to post some fun things every day that maybe thought-provoking or comforting or little something for people. So
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment with your thoughts and opinions, and check the description box for the links to my free community where I share lots of resources, my Pay What You Can community where we do classes and challenges together, my TikTok, Instagram, my Clips channel, and lovecoveredlife.com where I share my paintings. Thank you so much for your support.